here with David, or otherwise known as DDF, who is Managing Partner of Brain Science Centre at Ogilvy HealthWorld.
Correct.
Can you tell me a little bit more about some of the inspiration that's behind this?
So we moved into this building, Alpha Beta building here, Finsbury Square in London, July of last year, 2018. Evidence is really important to us here at Ogilvy HealthWorld, working in the field of health and medicine. And we saw this as a unique opportunity to look at that evidence from peer-reviewed journals, so robust studies, and draw from that to influence the design of this environment. And environment is a really important word as well from a behavioural perspective, in that many studies show that our behaviours are influenced by the context, the environment in which we place ourselves, and importantly that influence is often in automatic ways. So what we've looked to do is draw from that evidence and apply that evidence to start to support healthier behaviours, both in automatic ways, but also in more rational ways through overt communication, traditional communication.
Could you give me an example of a piece of research or a small soundbite of research and how that's been applied here?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose we looked at around about 5 or 6 elements, and there are quite a few that have a lot of research behind them. So sound, for example, specifically sounds of nature, there's a lot of evidence pointing to sounds of nature supporting high levels of concentration. So we've started to introduce that in some of the work areas. Aroma is a very, very interesting area, and we've also started to introduce aroma and experiment with aroma.
Some of the 5-star properties that we've worked with,
yes,
they have scent machines. Do you have a signature scent here?
We don't yet have a signature scent. To be honest with you, that isn't something high on our agenda, i.e. a specific objective to identify a signature scent that associates or creates an association with ourselves. However, what we are interested in is understanding signature scents that can support health and well-being in the workplace. So for example, we know that nature has a profound impact in the work environment. I'm very interested in petrichor or the scent associated with rain as it falls on the ground and the release of that scent. So that's something I'm very interested in exploring, and other natural scents, and through experimentation in our wellness lab to start to explore, is there a single scent or indeed a combination of scents that can support increased concentration, for example, or maybe relaxation, moments of relaxation, or in our meditation room or our yoga studio downstairs, support a more relaxing, mindful experience in those environments. So a whole array of workplace behaviours that can be supported by scent. Yes, absolutely.
I know I stopped you on scent, but what are some of the other environmental?
Scent certainly is one. Light is very important. Natural daylight is very, very important. But also intensity as well. And coming back to the research, some research points to the fact that dimmer environments support creativity. In here, but specifically in this reception lounge, we have a dimmer environment, and the idea is to encourage our staff to use this area in terms of thinking and creativity. Again, drawing from the evidence of dimmer lighting supporting creativity. So you picked up when you came in our living moss wall in the reception lounge here, and that was a very conscious effort to again introduce a large space of nature in the environment. Yes, we have over 200 plants on these 2 floors, so we made a strong effort to introduce real living nature. But the living moss wall is actually a product that is preserved with salt water, so it retains its green colour and its sort of vitality, let's say, or appearance of vitality, but it's actually preserved. So it's great great for a highly air-conditioned environment like an office building, in that it retains a natural look and feel, but doesn't need much maintenance in these types of environments.
Yeah, well, I have a beagle, and he comes to the office with me, and I'm a firm believer in having the office dog. But I see this as a dog-friendly zone.
Our office is very friendly towards dogs. We have lots of people wanting to take them for walks, or just diverting from focusing on a particular piece of work and spending a few moments, just sitting next to one of the dogs. Or I'll often do that, lie down next to the dog in its basket and talk to the dog. And
I'll let you Buster anytime you want. Something that you were talking about a little earlier was the wellness lab. Is that an actual lab?
So we mentioned Wellness Lab, and that is something that we have to explore practical interventions in a laboratory setting, so to experiment with ideas, and as a result of those experiments, those ideas that we see successful in terms of supporting health behaviours here in the workplace, then to share those with other people who are interested in improving workplace well-being. Now, an important part of Wellness Lab is for us to partner with some of our clients, partner with academic institutions, to really start to translate government recommendations, other people's recommendations, into very practical, tangible ways of turning those recommendations into health behaviours. One of the examples that we've already started to look at is light. And we know, for example, that dim light supports creativity, and brighter light supports alertness and happiness. So we're playing around, or we're experimenting with lighting in terms of brightness, dimness. And one of the key features that we've introduced into this reception lounge is our luminous textile wall. And that's got an added benefit in terms of, I will show you some of the imagery that we can introduce. So we've got light and imagery working together. And that's something we're very excited about, working with Philips to explore how that can specifically support health and well-being here in our building. But also, when we start to look at other types of products, tunable white is another Philips product, where actually the colour of the white light changes throughout the day, as does the colour of the sun. So again, we've sort of got this theme coming on of nature and coming back to nature, but we're very, very interested via the Wellness Lab to introduce products like these and to test them in a rigorous way to help our clients and help others with evidence behind such products, so that more and more people can benefit from them in terms of workplace well-being.
And do you see this as also engaging your own employees into this experience?
Absolutely. We need to control our experiments, and there will come a point in time our own people, let's say, become experimentally fatigued. But we're very, very fortunate that our neighbours in this workplace, we've got some great neighbours. So our plan would be to take some of the experiments into other office environments. And indeed, compare and contrast. Another organisation I'm working with is the Health Foundation, and we're very, very interested in comparing and contrasting some of these Wellness Lab initiatives in our own environment versus a hospital environment. Right. So somebody I'm speaking with right now is responsible for the theatres and the well-being of the staff who work in the theatre suites. And so one of the areas that's very interesting to us is what are the similarities and differences in terms of how an intervention might work in a surgical setting and surgical support setting versus an office setting. So to start to look not just at the office environment, but different workplace environments. And if we can start to see the same results coming through across different settings, then we should reach a point whereby we could say these results could be applied across many settings, as opposed to this just working in the office setting.
So when we talk about wellness, it has such a broad meaning to so many different people.
Yes.
Looking at putting these interventions in place, what is the desired output in terms of actual wellness for individuals?
So we've identified 8 themes that we're focusing on, and these are driven by government guidelines. For me, the most important theme is mental well-being, simply because it's important in terms of workplace productivity, staff well-being in the workplace, but also we're seeing more and more news and unfortunately increasing awareness of mental health problems. So certainly in my mind that is a priority for us, but at the same time there are other areas we're looking at. So for example, we're sat down now, and one of the initiatives that will be coming out very soon is how we may encourage our staff to stand up every hour, and again driven by guideline. So that falls under our umbrella of staying active, and that's the theme. So to eradicate, let's say, prolonged periods of sitting down. Coming back to collaborations, we're currently working with the master's students at Loughborough, London, and they've just completed a programme of work looking at how we might use behavioural science and technology to encourage our staff to use the staircase rather than the elevators. Some of the other elements that we're looking at: keeping hydrated. Of course, drinking water is important, but keeping hydrated is more than just drinking water. So making fresh watermelon available. Now, that is a very handy way of consuming water, because watermelon contains an awful lot of water, as do strawberries, for example. So again, just sort of going beyond the norms of making drinking water available to start to explore different ways in which we can support people in terms of maintaining hydration. Eating the rainbow, a variety of foods, looking at our overall diet from a more holistic perspective rather than pinpointing individual dishes. Being mindful, I've mentioned mental health. This is a very important program, and perhaps is our biggest program right now. We're very fortunate. We have an in-house trained counsellor, and he's available every Wednesday, or we call Wednesday Wellness Day. So he's available for one-on-one sessions with our staff. I also run sessions every Wednesday that we call Breakfast Pranayama. That focuses on pranayama, yoga, breathing, but importantly draws from not just the origins from a yogic tradition, but also contemporary science, so what contemporary science has to say about the importance of breathing, how through breathing, correct breathing, we can activate our parasympathetic nervous system, we can help support our response to stressors.
Something that we're doing at Bridge is a 50-day challenge.
Yes.
Balance, mind, body, and spirit. And I'm looking at the body and the mind, and I have some good information around that. But spirit is one of these undefined areas that I find all-encompassing. How would you define spirit in the sense of wellness?
Spirit, I think, can be viewed in a very narrow perspective, in terms of I might have an interpretation of spirit, mind, body, and spirit, and you might have an interpretation of mind, body, and spirit. For me, spirit is, I suppose, more embracing, and I think really comes to the fore when the mind and the body elements are working well together, and for me, the triumvirate of the three is really, really important. Myself, I draw more towards a yogic influence, an influence from India. I'm very intrigued by the traditional teachings, the yogis, and what they had to say, and how relevant those teachings and those learnings of many, many years ago are to us today, and how, again, coming back to science and peer-reviewed evidence, how modern science is starting to validate these traditions, and for me that becomes magical and mystical and just wonderful.
Yeah, I agree. I'd love to hear how the science supports this. A few years ago, I did a retreat in Portugal, which was mindfulness, meditation, and yoga, and very healthy eating, and great sleep. And after 7 days, I reached this kind of euphoric state where I just was happy. I thought maybe they put something in the water, but it was actually all the things that I've been doing for those 7 days. How does the brain get to that state of feeling that level of calm in such a short period of time, when it seems like if it's that easy, why aren't we doing it?
I think the brain is an amazing organ in terms of it being right at the center of who we are, but it's also a very complex organ, and certainly in brain sciences it's something that we're very interested in from a behavioral perspective. Personally, what I'm interested in is how we can use some very simple techniques from the field of yoga, just simple asana, posture, and breathing, and actually how just over a few days of repetition, or indeed in a 1 to 2, maybe 2 hour class, we can see some fundamental shifts in our mindfulness, in how we feel, that is clearly having an impact on the chemistry of our brain. Absolutely.
So looking around the offices, what would be one of your personal favorite spots?
Wow, that's quite difficult. There are a few. I think probably it's the luminous textile wall here in the reception lounge. We're looking at images of nature. As I've mentioned, nature has a very, very important impact in the working environment, but also something called priming from a behavioral science perspective, how we can use primes as subconscious cues. And we're actually looking at how we might use our luminous textile wall to specifically prime certain behaviors. So for example, some research suggests just by showing people imagery that relates to fitness and fitness activity, that can prime people into engaging in that sort of behavior. So those are some of the things that we want to explore and experiment with, or by showing imagery slightly out of focus, imagery of healthier foods, how that might shift nutrition, people's diets and nutrition.
I noticed when I was in one of the meeting rooms earlier, it's also an element of fun combined with this fitness. So there was some old phone style telephones with some weights on.
Yes, so those of us over 40, if we don't work out at the gym, then maintaining strength is very, very important. It's very easy to fall into the trap of health being a serious subject, which of course it is, but that doesn't mean to say we can't have fun with it. So we've specifically taken two approaches. One, to introduce elements like the old-fashioned phones, and instead of the receiver, then put some dumbbells there, and some of them, are quite heavy, so you certainly get a good workout, maybe whilst you're on the phone or in an internal meeting, but also fun through the themes and the copy style that we've introduced with the themes, the 8 themes around the building. So to create less of a dictatorial, you should do this, and more of inviting you into a conversation, and therefore encouraging you to reflect on something, or maybe to induce a sense of laughter, happiness, and again experimenting and seeing what impact that those have.
Now I know that relationships at work are very important to wellness,
yes,
wellness within the culture. And I noticed that you have quite a nice community feel around. Can you tell me a little bit more about how that it's been established and how it's working?
We're social creatures. Human beings we're social creatures, and interaction is very, very important. So in the design of our office space, we were very, very conscious of, in as many places as possible, moving away from the traditional sort of desk type unit with the screen to creating additional areas and a whole variety of areas that encourage interaction and facilitation, whether that's just two of us sitting here having a chat about a piece of work, right next to the natural light, or further into the reception lounge, maybe having to apply creativity. Again, on the long table you'll see in front of the luminous textile wall, the idea there is to facilitate a group of people coming together, or other areas in our social space where we have lots of round tables to encourage multiple types of communities. Let's say whether that's specifically work related or whether it's fun and activity related. That's an important part of the overall culture, and so our approach is to be very flexible and support those different interactions.
Looking around, it just seems to be so much color here. What is the influence that color has on wellness?
Ooh, color, wow. That's a very exciting area, and from the research I've read, actually there's quite a lot of mixed results coming through. Some studies, for example, point to the colour red being associated with more detailed focus or supporting a more detailed focus, the colour blue supporting more creative types of thinking. Now, importantly, when we look at that research, we have to really look at how was the research carried out. And when we start to realise that those results came from people, let's say, staring at a screen, then we have to sort of look at those findings in the bigger, broader context. Now, one of the areas that I'm really fascinated in is one study that I recently read suggests that blue light might cause an increased positive response from a stressful situation. So in our breakfast pranayama classes, we're actually experimenting with blue light. And so we're experimenting again with light to influence colour. But we also took an approach, and this was less driven by a specific piece of research, and I suppose more of a gut feeling based a lot on the research we'd read around nature. So in all of our meeting rooms, we've introduced colours that have actually been mapped from the human body. So before we moved in, we took some of our staff, we asked their permission to film or take very, very close-up photos of hair and skin and eyes and lips, and then we basically went right down to a pixel level and pulled those colours out. And then here's a plug for Dulux, not meant to be, but I'm telling you the story. Then we matched those colours against the Dulux trade colour palette, and we use those colours in our rooms, three of those colours. We have a room, as one of our staff had green eyes, so one of our room takes on some of the green colours, one of the rooms takes on some of the lip colours, and interestingly, we're not talking about bright red scarlet here, we're talking about natural lip colours, so more muted reds and brown reds. We've got freckles, we've got blonde hair.
I guess that's taking employee engagement to another level.
Well,
participate.
And in all fairness, quite a few of our staff did an awful lot of work behind the scenes in getting the illustrative style up and running, the copy style up and running, working with me, supporting all of us working together to bring these different elements to life. So what looks simple, actually, that there's quite a bit of work behind it, but I think it's fair to say, judging on the reactions when our staff moved in, completely well worth the effort, absolutely.